Hello, I'm King County Prosecuting Attorney Dan Satterberg. It's my honor to lead an office filled with some of the finest trial attorneys anywhere in the country. Every day, deputy prosecutors stand up in court, representing the people of the state of Washington, with one mission: to do justice. Last year, we filed nearly 9,000 felony cases. Now, many of these cases represent a terrible tragedy for the people involved. Stories of hurt, loss, and suffering are heard each day in our courtrooms as we seek to hold accountable those who do great harm. In this program, we profile two challenging cases tackled by our office in recent months. One of these cases was State versus Omar Norman. The charge, murder one. Now, the jury heard evidence that defendant Norman was a high-ranking member of a violent street gang, and he was accused of the execution-style slaying of a member of a rival gang, Terrell Milam, in 2005. Now, as is tragically so often the case, this murder was committed as retribution for an earlier murder. You know, gang violence prosecutions are extremely difficult. The investigations are typically hampered by a lack of witness cooperation. Many gang members would rather take matters into their own hands than to testify in court. But this time, justice was done in a courtroom, not on the street. Senior Deputy Prosecutor John Castleton argued the case.
Omar Norman, just 24 years old, but prosecutors say he's a longtime member of a Central Area gang and played the role of an enforcer.
Guns and his association with guns and his willingness to carry a gun is something that he seems to take pride in, and is something that he will always do. And I think he's an extremely dangerous individual that deserves to be locked up for as long as possible under the law.
Norman was found guilty of the 2005 murder of Terrell Milam, a rival gang member. Milam was suspected in a fight with then Seahawk defensive back Ken Hamlin. The Pioneer Square bar brawl left Hamlin with a head injury that ended his season. Hours after that fight, Milam was seen getting into a car with Norman and another man. The next day, Milam's body was found near Seward Park. He'd been shot multiple times. Prosecutors say the murder was prompted not by the fight with Hamlin, but by another drive-by shooting involving the two gangs. It was payback.
The known fatal blow, I believe all of these would have been fatal regardless, but the known fatal blow was the shot to the top of the head with the 9mm. And we know from the evidence that the 9mm shell casing found at the scene had the defendant's DNA profile on it, and I don't think there's any question based on that and the other evidence in the case. The defendant essentially executed Mr. Milam in this case and then left his body in the middle of the street to be found later on.
I felt that the conduct in this case and the crime in this case was brutal, heartless, and deserves the top of the standard range.
Norman reacted little to the long sentence, but the families of both Norman and Milam wept openly. Milam's father called for an end to all gang violence. In a poignant letter read in court, he wrote, "I pray that this court will send a strong and clear message to all of us that our lives are the most valuable of our possessions, that the laws that exist to protect our lives are not just for the benefit of the rich or privileged, but apply to all of us equally. And the wasting of any human life diminishes us all."
Omar Norman was sentenced to 52 years in prison for the slaying of Terrell Milam. At the sentencing hearing, Milam's aunt pleaded for an end to the senseless violence between gangs, saying, "What's happened to this family is going to happen to another family and another family and another until we do something as a community about gang violence."